He walked in when I thought I was alone, but instead of turning away, he stayed. And that changed everything. Something strange happened the other day. Something I can't shake off, no matter how much I try. My best friend walked into my dorm room and caught me in a moment I'll never forget. If you've ever lived in a dorm, you know privacy is more of a dream than a reality. You think you're finally alone, ready to breathe after a long day, and then life decides to remind you that walls here are paper thin and doors don't always stay locked. Ethan, my roommate and best friend, has never been the type to knock. He just walks in whenever he feels like it, throws his bag somewhere, and makes himself at home. We've lived together since freshman year. At this point, I thought there wasn't a single thing left for us to surprise each other with. That Tuesday started like any other. Ethan said he'd be out all evening, first grabbing dinner, then meeting up with his study group. He even left early, slinging his backpack over his shoulder like a guy with a plan. So naturally, I figured I had the night to myself. I kicked off my clothes, left my socks on, dimmed the lights, turned the music off, just trying to feel free. The hum of the fan, the cool air against my skin, the quiet hum of a rare, peaceful moment. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could exhale. I was lying there scrolling through my phone, half smiling at dumb memes when I heard a jingle of keys. A soft click. I ignored it, figured it was someone next door. Then the handle turned. Before I could react, the door swung open and light spilled into the room. Ethan stood there, mid-sentence, completely freezing when he saw me. We locked eyes, both of us caught in shock. No words, just silence, so heavy it almost hummed. I don't know who moved first, but I remember the heat rushing to my face. My pulse was racing, my thoughts scrambled. Ethan blinked hard, took a half step back, and stammered, I'm sorry, I didn't know. His voice wasn't steady. I grabbed the blanket and pulled it over me like a shield. You said you'd be gone all night. I managed, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. The study group got canceled, he muttered, eyes darting everywhere except at me. I didn't think. I just walked in. For a moment, neither of us knew what to do. He stood frozen in the doorway. I sat there clutching the blanket like it could undo what just happened. Then he gave a small, nervous laugh, not mocking, just human, and said quietly, "Guess I should start knocking, huh?" Something about that broke the tension. I let out a shaky breath, managing a faint smile. Yeah, that might help. He nodded, still awkward, and turned toward the door. But before leaving, he paused. Hey, sorry again. Didn't mean to embarrass you. I know, I said softly. It's fine. Just, next time, text first. He smiled, a little embarrassed, then shut the door behind him. The room went quiet again, but it didn't feel the same. The air felt different, heavier somehow, like something unspoken had slipped into the space between us. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the look on his face, not just surprise, but something else I couldn't name. Maybe curiosity, maybe concern, maybe both. It made me realize how thin the line between comfort and vulnerability can be, how quickly trust can turn awkward, and yet still stay intact. The next morning, Ethan knocked before coming in. It was small, but it meant something. And somehow, that quiet knock said more than any apology ever could. Ethan's tone shifted, a mix of shock and irritation, still glancing around like he'd stumbled into the wrong room. I texted you. I snapped, clutching the blanket tighter. I literally said do not disturb. He quietly closed the door behind him, leaning against it like the weight of the moment had just hit him. His arms folded, expression unreadable. I didn't expect, he started, then stopped mid-sentence. What? I asked, trying to sound calm, though my pulse was still out of control. He rubbed the back of his neck, cheeks flushed redder than I'd ever seen them. Then, out of nowhere, we both laughed, awkward, nervous, but real. It wasn't mocking. It was relief, breaking the tension neither of us knew how to handle. Ethan moved slowly, like he was afraid to make things worse. He sat down on the edge of his bed, exhaled, and muttered, I should have knocked. Yeah, I said, voice muffled beneath the blanket. You really should have. There was a pause. Then he asked quietly, Is this something you always do when I'm gone? Yeah, I replied without hesitation. He nodded, processing that. Didn't expect to walk in on a full moon, though. I roll my eyes. I'm getting a deadbolt. Smart move, he said with a half grin, but then his expression softened. Hey, I really am sorry if I made you uncomfortable. This time he wasn't joking. His voice was low, careful, sincere. I'm okay, I said softly. He looked at me for a long moment, longer than I expected. Yeah, me too. Something in his voice caught me off guard. It wasn't just embarrassment. There was something else there, something quiet, almost thoughtful. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't the nakedness that rattled me. It was the feeling of being seen. Not just looked at, but actually seen. That realization scared me more than anything. I shifted under the blanket, clearing my throat. Next time you change plans, maybe send a warning first. He smiled, but there was a flicker in his eyes I couldn't read. Next time, he said softly. But he didn't leave. Didn't pretend nothing had happened. He stayed seated across the room, elbows on his knees, glancing at me, then looking away, like he couldn't help himself. I stayed wrapped in the blanket, pretending it could protect me from whatever this new feeling was. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, but unfamiliar. He finally broke it. It's not like I've never seen you shirtless before, he said with a small laugh. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah, shirtless is a little different from totally naked. He chuckled, rubbing his jaw. Fair point. We both smiled, the kind of half smile that comes when words start to fail you. Something had changed between us, though neither of us dared to name it. Later that night, after the lights were off and the dorm was quiet again, I found myself staring at the ceiling, still thinking about that look in his eyes. Not shock, not judgment, just something human. And maybe for the first time, I realized how vulnerable trust really is. It wasn't mocking, it was just real. Then his eyes met mine again, and this time he didn't look away. I didn't mean to, he said quietly, but now I can't unsee it. Not just your body, the look on your face, the way you were just being. His words caught me off guard. I held his gaze, hoping he wasn't weirded out, hoping I wasn't either. Do you usually feel that free when you're alone? He asked, voice lower now, thoughtful rather than teasing. The question hung in the air, heavy but gentle. It wasn't judgmental. It felt honest, like he was trying to understand something deeper, trying to understand me. I hesitated, unsure how to answer without stepping across some invisible line between us. Finally, I said, sometimes it just feels good to stop pretending for a minute. Ethan exhaled softly, lowering his hands. His usual calm, distant self seemed to return, but I could tell something had shifted. When he first walked in, there was something in his eyes, something raw, unfiltered, and it lingered there still. It made my chest tighten, but I didn't ask about it. Not yet. Instead, I ran a hand through my hair, trying to lighten the mood. Well, I said with a weak laugh, we've officially reached a new level of roommate bonding. Congratulations, you've seen everything. Ethan's mouth curved into a crooked grin. I'm adding that to my resume, he said, and somehow, that made me laugh too. The sound came out softer than I expected, but it felt good. Real. The tension cracked slightly, though it didn't vanish. If anything, the humor only made the unspoken truth between us stand out more. Sorry if I came off weird, I murmured after a moment. He looked over at me, voice quiet. It's already weird, he said with a faint smile. But maybe that's okay. Something in his tone made the silence feel heavier. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Like neither of us was pretending anymore. He raised an eyebrow, sensing I was holding something back. I stared up at the ceiling, words tumbling out before I could stop them. I don't know. Maybe I just need a break. From everything. You're not the only one, he said after a beat. His voice was steady, but softer than usual. It gets exhausting, always trying to be the version of myself people expect. Cool, confident, unshakable. But if I slip, even a little, suddenly everyone's asking what's wrong. The way he said made me go still. There was a shift in the air, quiet, but impossible to ignore. Ethan didn't usually talk like that. When things got serious, he'd crack a joke or bury himself in work. But now he was just real. People ask questions, I said lightly, trying to ease the moment. Not directly, he replied, a small smile tugging at his lips. But you can feel it, especially when you're close to someone. when you're roommates. You start noticing the things people don't say. The room felt smaller then, though neither of us moved. The air felt warmer, heavier. I shifted slightly, and the blanket slipped just a little. His eyes flicked toward it, then quickly away, but not fast enough. Our gazes met again. This time, neither of us looked away. There was something electric in the silence. Not tension exactly, something quieter, deeper. The kind of silence where emotions don't need words, where vulnerability speaks louder than anything else. And for a fleeting moment, I realized this wasn't about what he saw. It was about being seen at all. I should probably put something on, I said, but I didn't move. He didn't either. We stayed like that for a while, the quiet between us deepening until it almost felt alive. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was charged like the air before a storm, and that terrified me more than the embarrassment from before. Because this wasn't about being caught. It was about what came next. Ethan leaned back, folding his arms behind his head. He looked calm, but his jaw was tight. You ever think about what people don't say? He asked suddenly. I blinked. What do you mean? Sometimes, he said slowly, I think silence says more than words ever could. We dance around the feelings we already share just because we're scared to name them. His words hit me hard, like sparks landing on dry ground. My throat tightened. Were we talking about the same thing? The easy grin he usually wore was gone. Beneath his calm voice, something else waited. Honest, deliberate. I swallowed, choosing my words carefully. Then maybe we shouldn't ignore it, whatever this is. He didn't react right away. He just held my gaze, unreadable, before finally nodding. The way he did it, it wasn't casual. It felt like stepping on a fragile ground we both knew might never hold. In that stillness, something between us shifted. We hadn't moved, but the air changed completely. I adjusted the blanket, not to hide, but to keep my hands from shaking. Across from me, Ethan stayed exactly as he was, eyes steady, quiet, searching. Are we actually talking about this? I asked. Or just circling around it? He exhaled softly. It might have been a laugh, but it wasn't. Maybe both, he said. There was no playfulness left, only honesty. It caught me off guard, that openness. I didn't mean to catch you off guard, he said finally. I wasn't trying to sneak up on you. It's fine, I replied, my voice lower than I meant it to be. But deep down, it didn't feel like just an accident. He nodded slowly. It wasn't about what I saw, he said. You weren't just uncovered. You were unguarded. His words landed deeper than I expected. Is that a bad thing? I asked. He shook his head. No, just rare. He looked down for a moment, then back at me, his expression softer but intent. Have you ever felt like we've been dodging something? He asked quietly. Laughing too hard, looking too long, pretending not to notice what's already there? The air in the room thickened, charged with meaning. I swallowed hard. So what do we do about it? He took a breath, the kind people take before saying something that matters. Maybe we stop pretending, he said, and just see where honesty takes us. The lamp cast a warm glow across the space between us, close but not crossing. The air buzzed alive, uncertain. And in that moment, I realized that falling didn't have to mean breaking. It could simply mean being brave enough to be seen. Gravity pulled us closer, quiet, steady, inevitable. His presence radiated warmth, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. My fingers twitched, but I didn't move. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I knew how much this moment might change everything. Then his hand brushed lightly against mine. He froze, waiting. I shifted just enough to let my fingers rest against his. You sure? He whispered. No. But I want to be. Somehow, that truth was enough. We didn't move closer. We didn't need to. The quiet connection between us, our hands barely touching, carried more weight than any words could. In his eyes, I saw it all. Confusion, fear, hope, and something that felt like recognition. For the first time, neither of us looked away. The air felt charged, humming with something alive and unspoken. His thumb brushed against mine, slow, uncertain, and it was enough to make every thought in my head fade into static. I wasn't even sure I was breathing anymore. The silence didn't feel heavy now. It felt full. Waiting. Ethan turned his head slightly. I felt his gaze before I met it. His eyes weren't teasing or guarded anymore. They were searching, honest. When I didn't pull my hand away, he exhaled softly, a small smile flickering across his face. It wasn't pride. It was relief. I don't know what happens if we cross this line, he said quietly. But I can't keep pretending this means nothing. His words hit deeper than I expected. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were true. I've been carrying silence for so long. I'd almost forgotten what honesty sounded like. The blanket slipped slightly from my shoulder, but I didn't care. He noticed, his eyes flicking down for just a heartbeat before returning to mine. Steady, unsure, but real. Have you thought about it before? I asked softly. Not just tonight. He hesitated, taking a breath. Yeah, he said finally. I have, but not in a way that made sense. You were the one thing I kept trying not to want. The line lingered between us, fragile and heavy. It didn't sound like a confession. It sounded like surrender. I let the silence hold us for a moment. This time, it wasn't fear that kept me still. It was the need to stay in the honesty of it. When I looked at him again, the confusion in his eyes was gone. There was only clarity and the faint trace of hope. You're not just experimenting, right? I asked, my voice barely steady. Ethan sat a little straighter, his tone calm but sure. I've been trying to figure that out for a while, he said. Maybe I don't have all the answers, but I know I don't want to spend my life wondering what if. Something in his words steadied me. The fear didn't vanish, but it softened, replaced by a strange peace. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was running from myself. He looked at me again, quieter now. Maybe this isn't about having it all figured out, he said. Maybe it's just about being honest. With each other, with ourselves. I nodded slowly. Then let's start there. The air eased between us. No ruse, no pretending. Just two people trying to understand the weight of something real. Outside, the rain began, soft at first, then steady. It filled the silence between us, washing away the tension that had built for months. He didn't move closer, and neither did I. But something in us had already shifted, something we couldn't take back, and maybe didn't want to. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I moved closer, just enough that our knees touched. The warmth of that small contact quieted everything else around us. Our breaths fell into rhythm, slow and careful, like we were learning how to breathe again. He looked down at our joined hands and gave a faint, nervous smile. You're shaking, he murmured. So are you, I whispered back. That truth connected us more than anything else could have. He lifted a hand, hesitating before his fingers traced the edge of my jaw. I leaned into his touch without thinking, answering him in silence. His thumb brushed softly against my cheek, and the world seemed to narrow until it was only him, only us. I keep thinking, he said quietly, his voice catching slightly, that one choice could change everything. My heart caught. I didn't trust my voice, so I just breathed his name. He leaned in slowly, his forehead resting against mine. The world felt still, fragile, sacred. Tell me if you want to stop, he whispered. I don't, I said, barely louder than a breath. When our lips met, it wasn't rushed or uncertain. It was careful, honest, full of all the things we'd been too afraid to say. It wasn't just a kiss. It was understanding. It was permission. It was a quiet promise that whatever this was, we were finally brave enough to face it. When I pulled back, he searched my eyes, almost afraid to believe it. Is this okay? He asked softly. It's more than okay, I said. I've wanted this for so long. His expression softened. Relief, disbelief, something that looked like home. He smiled, a trembling, quiet kind of smile, and in that moment I knew there was no going back. Whatever came next, we'd step into it together. He hesitated only a heartbeat before leaning closer again, his breath brushing my skin. The world around us faded, leaving just the hum of something real, alive, fragile. He steadied himself, his touch gentle, almost reverent, like he was memorizing this moment in case it never came again. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. He looked at me again, silently asking if this was still okay. I nodded. The air between us broke, like a wave, finally reaching shore. His touch stayed careful, Not demanding, not uncertain, just honest. There was something grounding in it, something that felt less like passion and more like trust. He whispered something soft, something I didn't fully catch, and I found myself smiling through the rush of emotion. We weren't pretending anymore. Every breath, every glance said everything words couldn't. The night didn't feel reckless or forbidden. It felt inevitable, like something that had been waiting quietly for us to be ready, to stop hiding, to simply be. When he looked at me again, there was a tenderness in his eyes that broke something open inside me. This wasn't about curiosity or confusion anymore. It was about connection, something real and steady that neither of us could ignore. He reached out again, his hands gentle against my face. When our lips met the second time, it wasn't about crossing lines. It was about meaning it. Every heartbeat, every breath carried the quiet certainty of something genuine. Tears rose before I could stop them. He noticed, brushing his thumb beneath my eye, not asking why. He didn't need to. Then everything went still. No words, no rush, just the sound of our breathing, the rhythm of our hearts, and the quiet peace of two people finally letting go of fear. There was nothing to prove, nothing to hide. Just honesty. Just us. And in that stillness, I realized love isn't always loud or certain. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to stay when everything in you is afraid to. It felt like falling, but not the kind that hurts. It was falling into something we both needed, something we hadn't even realized we'd been reaching for all along. We held on to each other as the moment faded, our hearts still racing. Something inside me shifted, not broken, just changed in a way that left me breathless. The next morning, everything felt quietly aligned. Golden light filtered through the blinds, stretching across Ethan's back. I lay there watching him sleep, his breathing calm, his lips slightly parted. He looked peaceful, and in that moment, I knew this wasn't a dream or some late-night mistake. He'd come to the edge with me, and neither of us had turned away. I moved carefully, trying not to wake him, but his eyes fluttered open. Sleepy and soft, he smiled, that slow, shy smile that always made my chest tighten. "Hey," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Hey," I whispered back. He stretched, then pulled me closer like it was something he'd always done. And maybe, in that moment, it was exactly where we were meant to be. "I have no idea what time it is," he said, half laughing. "Doesn't matter," I replied, and I meant it. We lay there quietly, still wrapped in the same blanket in our small college room. I half expected the weight of reality to crash in, confusion, regret, panic. But none of it came. Instead, there was a strange stillness, like the world had paused just long enough for us to breathe. "I meant everything I said last night," Ethan said softly. None of it was just in the moment. My heart. Something strange happened the other day, and I can't get out of my head. My best friend walked into my dorm room and caught me in a moment I'll never forget. If you've ever lived in a dorm, you know, privacy is more of a dream than a reality. You think you're alone, finally able to breathe after a long, exhausting day, and then life decides to mess with you. My roommate and best friend, Ethan, is the kind of guy who never texts before showing up. He crashes in my room whenever he feels like it, and somehow, it's always like he owns the place. We've been roommates since freshman year. By now, I thought we knew everything about each other. Our habits, our routines, our quirks. It all started on a Tuesday, a completely ordinary one. Ethan told me he'd be out all evening. First a lecture, then a study group. So naturally, I figured I had the whole dorm to myself. I decided to relax, really relax. Kicked off my clothes, dimmed the lights. Turned off the music. Nothing weird, just peace. The quiet hum of the fan. The softness of sheets. The cool air against my skin. For once, I felt free. I lay there, scrolling through my phone completely at ease. I was sure I'd locked the door. Outside, I could hear laughter in the hallway. The usual dorm noise. Then I heard it. A faint jingle of keys. A soft click. Before I could react, the door swung open, flooding the room with light. And there stood Ethan, halfway through saying something. We both froze. I was completely naked. Time stopped. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. Ethan blinked, then muttered, "I am sorry." But his voice wasn't steady. I scrambled for the blanket, my hands fumbling. "You said you'd be gone all night." I blurted. "The study group got canceled," he said, still looking like he'd stumbled into the wrong world. "I texted you, do not disturb." I snapped, clutching the blanket tighter. He quietly shut the door behind him, leaning against it like the weight of the moment had just hit him. "I didn't expect," he started, then stopped mid-sentence. "What?" I asked. He rubbed the back of his neck, cheeks redder than I'd ever seen them. And then, out of nowhere, we both laughed. Awkward, nervous, but real. Ethan sat down on the edge of his bed, sighing. "I should have knocked." "Yeah, you really should have," I whispered. "Is this something you always do when I'm gone?" he asked gently. "Yeah," I said, half embarrassed, half amused. He nodded slowly, then gave a small smile. "Didn't expect to walk in on a full moon." I rolled my eyes. "I'm getting a deadbolt." "Smart move," he grinned, but then his expression softened. "Hey, I really am sorry if I made you uncomfortable." "It's okay," I said quietly. He looked at me, really looked. Not embarrassed, not awkward, just seeing me. And that scared me more than being caught naked. His voice softened. "It wasn't just what I saw. It was how you looked, like you weren't pretending anymore." "Is that a bad thing?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, just different." We fell silent. The air between us thickened, not heavy, but alive. "Do you ever think about the things people don't say?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes silence says more than words ever could," he murmured. "We dance around feelings we already share because we're scared to name them." His words hit me hard. Maybe we were talking about more than what had just happened. "Then maybe," I said slowly, "we shouldn't ignore it." He met my eyes, steady, unguarded. The quiet between us changed. Charged. Electric. He took a slow breath. "I don't know what this is," he said softly, "but I feel it, like it's in my bones." My heart thudded. What were we supposed to do about it? He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "What do you want to do about it?" He stood and crossed the space between us. "Are you ready to fall?" he asked, his voice rough with honesty. "No." I breathed, "but I want to." He sat beside me. The mattress dipped. Gravity pulled us closer. His hand brushed mine, hesitating. I didn't move away. That tiny touch felt like everything. "I don't know what happens if we cross this line," he said, "but I can't pretend it means nothing. I wanted this for so long," I whispered. His expression softened, relief, warmth, home. And when he leaned in, the world stilled. Our first kiss wasn't wild. It was careful, real, full of every word we'd been too afraid to say. That night didn't feel like losing control. It felt like finally letting go. Not a mistake, not confusion, but two people choosing to be honest. The next morning, golden light stretched across his back. I watched him breathe, calm and steady. And in that quiet, I knew this wasn't a dream. He stirred, blinked, smiled sleepily. Hey, hey, I whispered back. He pulled me close like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I meant what I said last night," he murmured. "None of it was just the moment." "Are you sure?" I asked. He nodded. "I don't know where this goes, but I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." Relief filled my chest. "Me either." He smiled, kissed me softly. "We'll figure it out." And for once, I believed him. Stepping outside later, everything felt new. Not perfect, not certain, but real. We weren't just best friends anymore, but we weren't defined by labels either. We were something in between, something honest, something worth building on. Last night, I thought I'd ruined the most important friendship of my life. But waking up beside him didn't feel like ruin. It felt like beginning. I still don't know where this is going. Maybe I don't need to. Should I bring it up again, define it, set rules? Or should I just breathe and let whatever's meant to happen naturally? What would you do if you were me? Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Anonymous Love Tales for more heartfelt stories about love, friendship, and finding yourself.